Thank you, General, for this interview.
Honored to be with you today.
So we just start with the latest coming out of Syria, specifically Kobane. There's a huge likelihood of it falling in the hands of Daesh. What's the plan for the coalition if this happens?
Well, I would not say it's a huge likelihood that it's going to fall into the hands of Daesh. The defenders of Kobane have held on for a long time. The coalition has been providing air support regularly around Kobane each day. There is a Peshmerga relief column en route now. There are Free Syrian Army elements en route now to reinforce the defenders of Kobane. And so the defenders are going to continue to be supported by the coalition, and I think they've been holding out quite well at this point.
Mm-hmm. What if, it's a hypothetical question, is there a plan just in case Daesh comes close to the Syrian-Turkish border?
Well, Daesh is close to the Syrian border.
Takes it over.
Well, I don't think that that's going to be the case, and I typically try not operational issues to answer a hypothetical. We're going to continue to support the defenders of Kobane. We'll continue to consult with the Turks on the situation along the border, and we'll remain in consultation over this.
So who are you coordinating with on the FSA level?
You mean with regard to Kobane?
Yes.
Well, we're coordinating. We have elements that are talking to the defenders, and that's helping us, obviously, with the application of fires to ensure that those fires are on target and they're safe. And that's a very important opportunity for us to begin to build relationships in that regard.
There's a feeling that Kobane is a bit exaggerated in the international media. Just as we are speaking, many villages in Idlib are just about, or probably have fallen in the hands of Daesh and affiliates. One of the moderate FSA's, Jamal Maroof, is fighting fierce battles not to allow this, but it might happen. Are you sending any support whatsoever to moderate FSA currently, just as things are happening?
Well, we're supporting the defenders of Kobane. We're conducting airstrikes throughout Syria on Daesh targets. You're bringing up a particular situation right now that I don't know about operationally, but I would tell you that we are seeking those command and control sites, those training centers, those lines of communications within Syria that present targets that support Daesh operations throughout the region, and in particular in Iraq as well. And we're striking those throughout the region, throughout Syria, as well as striking the Daesh elements around Kobane. So you brought up a particular situation which is new to me, but we're continuing air operations across Syria and going after those Daesh targets that present themselves.
Has the coalition targeted any faction other than Daesh? I'm talking about Jabhat al-Nusra and Ahrar al-Sham.
Well, the United States targeted Khorasan, which is an element of al-Nusra, which is an al-Qaeda veteran organization. And the coalition has attacked Daesh, and will continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. So the casualties of Daesh, in comparison to the casualties of the Assad regime, are not much. I mean, we're not talking about many people that have died over the past months in comparison to the Assad regime. So any normal person in the Arab street is asking why the whole world is so fussy about Daesh, whereas they didn't even take any action against the Assad regime that has killed more than 200,000 people so far.
Well, we're going to ultimately achieve a political outcome in Syria as a result of our supporting the Free Syrian Army and helping the moderate Syrian opposition create political cohesion, and those two together, in conjunction with our train and equip program and other support that we will provide them, we ultimately hope that that political echelon, paired with a capable and credible Free Syrian Army, is going to be a very prominent voice, if not a prominent voice, a preeminent voice in Syria for the political outcome that we seek. And
General, it's been 3 years.
And that political outcome does not envision Assad.
It's been 3 years. And people are dying by the minute. I mean, just to know how we can convince people. Will the coalition at some point probably target Assad forces on the ground?
Well, that's a question that I can't answer at this particular moment. Our intention is to support the Free Syrian Army. And we'll build the capability of the Free Syrian Army to defend itself from the regime as well. Those capabilities that we will ultimately build into that organization are intended to give it the battlefield credibility, not just to deal with Daesh and not just to deal with Jabhat al-Nusra, but also to defend itself from the regime. And this is an idea, ultimately, that will, we hope, rally other Syrians to the cause of the moderate Syrian opposition and the Free Syrians. So as I said, they are not only a prominent voice in the political outcome, it's a preeminent voice in the political outcome.
So some questions were raised.
And very importantly, that political outcome, if I didn't say it earlier, does not include Bashar al-Assad. It does not include him.
Regarding the training centers, how many are they? Where are they? The training camps?
Yeah, I'm going to let the countries who have hosted them speak for themselves. We'll probably have 3. And the intent will be to have elements of the Free Syrians or the moderate Syrian opposition come to those camps, and we'll be training them over the next several years.
It was very visible for any journalist covering Syria that when you land in Hatay and cross the border towards Syria, you would see a lot of those foreign fighters allowed into Syria. Turkey has been accused of turning a blind eye to those foreign fighters. Hasn't the U.S. intelligence, the NATO, all these intelligence officers on the ground haven't they spotted these foreign fighters flowing in over the past 2 years?
Well, I think Turkey has made the case of late that there has been an issue with foreign fighters in transit, and they are taking the measures now, taking the steps now, now that they're working in partnership with many of the European states and other states from which foreign fighters emerge, to take those steps necessary to control their borders and to prevent that from happening.
Have you officially asked Turkey to just stop the flow of those foreign fighters?
Well, we talked to Turkey about all the 5 lines of operation with respect to the strategy associated with this campaign, which is the military dimension, dealing with foreign fighters, and in that regard, we have talked with Turkey about dealing with foreign fighters, and they are committed. The third is in dealing with the disruption of the finances of Daesh, providing humanitarian support. And since we're talking about Turkey, I think Turkey deserves credit for dealing at a humanitarian level for the 1.8 million refugees that are currently in Turkey, and many more could come. And then ultimately, in helping us to delegitimize the image of Daesh and the brand of Daesh. And so we're talking to Turkey about a variety of things. It's a political consultation between 2 allies and a NATO ally. And those consultations will continue, and we expect that there will be other opportunities for cooperation to emerge from that.
Now, Hezbollah is rated or ranked one of the top terrorist organizations on the US list and internationally. So is Daesh. So will the coalition strike Hezbollah fighters on the ground in Syria?
At this particular moment, the efforts of the coalition are focused on stabilizing the situation in Iraq, providing the Iraqi security forces and ultimately the central government of Iraq, led by Prime Minister Abadi, with the ability to restore the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Iraq. And we'll concentrate on Daesh, and we'll eliminate that presence in Iraq. At the same time, the coalition efforts are going to be focused on giving the Free Syrian Army the capacity to defend itself and ultimately to deal with Daesh.
Hezbollah is not on the radar.
We will ensure that the Free Syrian Army has the capacity to deal with those elements in Syria that present a threat to them. And if Hezbollah presents a threat to the Free Syrian Army through the training and the equipping that we give to them, we hope that they'll be able to defend themselves in that regard.
So, talking about Iraq, are the Iranian military consultants that the government has talked about to us, they're on the ground. Are you coordinating with these, with the Shiite militias, with those all, with the Sunni tribes? Who are you coordinating with?
Well, we're working very closely with the Iraqi security forces. Just last week, the central government named a Minister of Defense and a Minister of Interior for the first time since 2010, which is frankly quite an advance, quite a breakthrough in governance. So we're increasingly dealing through the institutions of the security forces of Iraq. And we'll continue to do that. We'll work closely with the security institutions with regard to the Sunni tribes. They're an important adjunct to the outcome.
Will you arm them?
Well, we'll work through the Iraqi security forces to do that. We'll train them, and we'll work closely with the Iraqis to provide them the material and the weapons and the ammunition. With regard to the role of Iran, Secretary Kerry has been very clear that we welcome the constructive role of every country in this process, and we, again, just as with others, we would welcome a constructive role by the Iranians.
Will the National Guard do the job of fighting ISIS, Daesh, and how will you enforce the National Guard?
Well, the National Guard will ultimately exist as, if you will, the middle ground between the police, which are the closest security echelon to the population, and to the National Army. So imagine three different echelons: the police closest to the people, the National Army responsible for the territorial integrity and emergencies from without. In the middle will be the National Guard brigades, and they'll be raised in the provinces. Initially, there'll be 3 in the north and 3 in the south. The brigades will look like the demographic laydown of the population in those provinces. They will answer to the governor of that province, but in the event that there is a national emergency, they can be federalized to become part of the Iraqi army. They'll belong to the Ministry of Defense. They'll be trained through the Ministry of Defense. They'll be paid by the Ministry of Defense, but they'll be a provincial entity. And in the event that the police closest to the population run into a terrorist attack or some form of an emergency that exceeds their capacity, then the governor will have the authority to order the provincial National Guard brigade to move to that point to solve it.
But you know, in Iraq, everything turns very sectarian in the end. Sunni versus Shiites, or Shiite against Sunni. Will there be a plan to allow this to happen?
I think there's been a trend of late, a really positive trend in Iraq, where senior political leaders and senior religious leaders have talked about the future of Iraq relying on it being for all Iraqis, Kurds, Shia, Sunni, and that the intent with regard to the refurbishment and the regeneration of the Iraqi army and the Iraqi security forces will be that those forces represent the people of Iraq, not a sect, not a particular organization, but the people of Iraq. And we've heard religious leaders, we've heard political leaders, all speaking with one voice on that issue. And that will be new. It won't be easy. It's going to take time. But the political and the political dedication to that end and the senior Iraqi leaders being motivated to that end is a good start. Now we have to bring the reality to that in the raising and the training of these forces.
One last question. Is ISIS a threat only to Syria and Iraq, or there are threats on Lebanon or Jordan?
It's a threat to the region, and in many ways it's a threat to the world. It's a threat to the region, obviously, because we have seen it emerge in Syria. We have seen the results of its actions in Iraq. We have seen that the populations that were displaced as a result of what Daesh has done to the civilians have gone in the millions into Turkey and into Lebanon and into Jordan. And so those other frontline states have suffered from this. But we've also seen that the idea of Daesh, as communicated through social media and the internet, has created on a broader basis an opportunity for those who would tend to be easily radicalized to join this movement and ultimately to want to become part of this. So the immediate emergency is what has happened in Iraq and in Syria. The regional emergency is the consequences of this and the potential spread into our friends in the region. But the global consequences is that the idea of Daesh ultimately is attractive to elements in the populations around the world. And as I said before, of the 5 lines of effort the last of those lines of effort, where we are achieving, I think, significant consensus and unity within the coalition, is that when we finally defeat the idea of Daesh, then we will have defeated Daesh.
Thank you so much.